No one noticed the girl crying behind the hotel service elevator. That was the thing about people like Elena Moore, they were invisible when they suffered and unforgettable only after it was too late. The marble halls of the Blackthorn Grand Hotel gleamed under crystal chandeliers, filled with laughter, silk gowns, and champagne that cost more than Elena earned in a month. Somewhere upstairs, the elite of the city celebrated an engagement party that would soon turn into the most powerful vampire wedding in centuries. And Elena was on her knees, scrubbing red wine out of a carpet that didn't belong to her. Her hands trembled as she worked. Not because of the stain, but because 10 minutes earlier her manager had whispered something cruel into her ear with a smile that made her feel smaller than dirt. "Clean it properly this time," he'd said. "Or don't bother coming back tomorrow." Elena swallowed the lump in her throat and kept scrubbing. She didn't know that someone was watching her. High above the ballroom floor, standing on the balcony reserved for royalty, King Lucien Nocturne surveyed the crowd with cold, ancient eyes. He had ruled the vampire world for over 5 centuries, survived wars, betrayals, and blood moons that wiped entire covens from existence. Yet nothing bored him more than parties like this. Lucien didn't drink the champagne, didn't smile, didn't dance. He was there because he had to be. His younger brother, Prince Adrien Nocturne, was getting married in 3 days, and the wedding was not just a celebration. It was a political alliance meant to secure peace between rival vampire houses. Every powerful clan would be watching Lucien closely. And they all expected one thing: a queen. Someone ancient. Someone ruthless. Someone worthy of standing beside a king. Lucien had disappointed them many times before, but never like this. "You still haven't chosen a date," one of the council elders murmured beside him. Lucien's jaw tightened. "I don't need one." "You do," the elder replied calmly. "Appearances matter. Especially now." Lucien turned away from the ballroom, irritated, until his gaze drifted downward. That's when he saw her. A young woman in a plain service uniform, kneeling on the floor, her shoulders shaking as she desperately tried to erase a mistake she didn't even make. A guest had bumped into her. The glass had shattered. And she had been blamed. Lucien's world slowed. He could hear her heartbeat, fast, uneven, exhausted. He could smell the faint trace of fear clinging to her skin. But beneath it was something else. Kindness. Real. Unpolished. Rare. Elena finished cleaning the carpet, stood up, and wiped her eyes quickly, because crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. She lifted her chin and walked past the ballroom doors like she didn't feel completely broken inside. Lucien didn't realize he had moved until he was already descending the stairs. By the time Elena reached the service hallway, a deep voice stopped her. "Mississippi." She turned and froze. The man standing before her didn't look real. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in black that seemed to absorb the light around him. His eyes were dark, intense, and far too knowing. "Yes?" she asked quietly. Lucien studied her like a puzzle he'd waited centuries to solve. "I need a favor," he said. Elena blinked. "I'm working." "I'll pay you," Lucien replied calmly. She almost laughed. "Almost. People like you don't ask people like me for favors." Lucien's lips curved slightly, not a smile but something close. "That's exactly why I'm asking you." He told her the truth, at least the version she could survive hearing. A wedding. 3 days. Pretend to be his date. Smile. Stand beside him. In return? Enough money to erase her debts. To breathe again. To start over. Elena hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous. Unreal. Too good to be true. But then she remembered the way her manager had looked at her. The way the world never protected girls like her. And she said yes. She didn't know that by agreeing she had just stepped into a war older than history. She didn't know that the man standing in front of her was feared by monsters. And she definitely didn't know that the wedding she was walking into would change the fate of both humans and vampires forever. The Nocturne estate did not look like a place where love was celebrated. As the black luxury car climbed the winding mountain road, Elena pressed her forehead lightly against the tinted window. Endless iron gates rose from the mist like the ribs of some enormous dead beast. Ancient stone towers pierced the fog, their sharp edges silhouetted against a moon swollen and red, as if the sky itself were bleeding. "This place looks like it eats people," Elena whispered. Lucien sat beside her, perfectly still. "Only if they come uninvited." That didn't help. The gates opened on their own with a deep, groaning sound that vibrated through Elena's chest. The car passed into the inner grounds, where torchlight flickered along cobblestone paths and statues of long-dead kings stared down with hollow stone eyes. Elena's fingers curled into the fabric of her borrowed coat. She had grown up poor, eviction notices, cold winters and empty refrigerators, but this fear was different. This wasn't about money. It was about survival. Lucien noticed. He didn't say anything. He simply adjusted his posture and rested his hand on the seat between them, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the silent offer of protection. The car stopped. A line of vampires waited at the entrance. They were beautiful in the way storms are beautiful, lethal and unavoidable. Men and women in tailored black attire, skin flawless, eyes sharp with curiosity and hunger. The moment Lucien stepped out, every single one of them bowed. Every single one. Elena's heart skipped. Lucien turned and offered her his hand. She hesitated. Then she remembered why she was here. Elena took his hand. The effect was immediate. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. That's her? She's human. Is this a joke? She smells like fear. Elena kept her chin high, even as her knees threatened to give out. Lucien's grip tightened just slightly, a warning to them, not her. Stand close, he murmured. They test weakness the way sharks test blood. The massive doors opened, revealing a hall so vast Elena felt small just breathing inside it. Candles floated in midair. Dark velvet drapes swallowed sound. And at the far end of the hall, seated on an obsidian throne, was Prince Adrien Nocturne, Lucien's brother. Adrien stood as they approached. Where Lucien was cold control, Adrien was fire barely restrained. His smile was sharp. His eyes glowed faintly crimson as they locked onto Elena. So, Adrien said, voice echoing through the hall. This is the woman who made my brother break every expectation. Elena felt every gaze snap toward her. Lucien spoke before she could. This is Elena. She is under my protection. A murmur passed through the room. Adrien stepped closer, too close. He circled Elena slowly, openly inhaling. Fragile, he said softly. Human. And brave enough to stand here. Elena's hands trembled, but she met his eyes. I didn't come here to be judged, she said quietly. I came because I was invited. The room fell silent. Lucien turned, surprised. Adrien laughed, loud and sudden. Oh, I like her. Someone scoffed from the crowd. A tall vampire woman stepped forward, her silver gown clinging like liquid moonlight. Her smile was sharp, practiced. King Lucien, she said sweetly. Is this some sort of political statement? Bringing a servant girl into sacred halls? Elena flinched. Lucien did not. She is my date, he said calmly. And your opinion is irrelevant. The woman's eyes flashed with humiliation. Elena realized something in that moment. They weren't angry because she was weak. They were angry because she was protected. Dinner was worse. The table stretched endlessly, filled with rare meats and dark wine Elena did not touch. Conversation flowed like knives hidden in silk. Where did you meet? Is she aware of our customs? Does she understand what she's standing beside? Each question was a trap. Elena answered simply. Honestly. Without arrogance. And somehow, that made it worse for them. At one point, a young vampire deliberately bumped Elena's chair, sloshing thick red wine across her lap. Gasps echoed. The vampire smirked. Oops. Elena froze, humiliation burning her face. Lucien stood. The room went deathly still. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't bare his fangs. He simply looked at the offender. Apologize, Lucien said. The vampire laughed nervously. She's human? Lucien's eyes darkened. The candles flickered violently. Apologize, he repeated. The vampire swallowed. I apologize. Lucien turned to Elena. Are you hurt? She shook her head. He nodded once, then sat down, as if nothing had happened. But no one spoke for several minutes. Later that night, Elena escaped to the balcony, needing air. The moonlight bathed the stone in silver. Her hands shook as she gripped the railing. I don't belong here, she whispered. Lucien appeared beside her. You're wrong, he said. You belong anywhere you choose to stand. She laughed bitterly. Easy for a king to say. Lucien studied her, really studied her. The way she didn't beg, didn't boast, didn't crumble. You showed courage tonight, he said. That is rarer than blood. Elena looked at him. Why do you really need me here? Lucien was silent for a long time. Because, he said finally, this world has forgotten what kindness looks like. And for the first time since arriving, Elena felt something warm settle in her chest. Not safety, not love, but the dangerous beginning of trust. Far below them, unseen eyes watched from the shadows. And the blood moon rose higher. Elena did not sleep that night. The room they had given her was larger than her entire apartment back home, draped in velvet and candlelight, with a bed that looked untouched for centuries. But comfort meant nothing when fear sat heavy in her chest. She lay awake listening to the ancient estate breathe, stones settling, distant footsteps, the low hum of magic that pulsed through the walls like a second heartbeat. Somewhere beyond those walls, creatures far stronger than her were deciding whether she deserved to live. Just before dawn, a knock echoed through the chamber. Sure. Formal. Lucien stood on the other side when she opened the door, already dressed in black, his expression unreadable. "They're calling a council," he said. "About you." Elena's stomach dropped. "About sending me home?" Lucien didn't answer. The council chamber was carved directly into the mountain, a circular room of black stone illuminated by crimson runes etched into the floor. 12 elders sat along the perimeter, ancient and powerful, their eyes glowing faintly as Elena entered. She felt naked without armor, without weapons. Lucien took his place beside her, not in front of her. That mattered. "She is human," one elder said, voice echoing unnaturally. "Her presence violates our oldest laws." "She carries no power," another added. "No lineage. No protection." Lucien's jaw tightened. "She is under mine." A low chuckle rippled through the chamber. "Then let her prove her worth," Prince Adrian said lazily from his seat. "If she survives, she stays. If not, the problem solves itself." Elena's breath caught. "Survives what?" The runes flared. "The trial of the Crimson Veil," an elder announced. "A test of truth." Lucien turned sharply. "No. That trial is designed to break minds." "Exactly," Adrian replied, smiling. "Let us see what she's made of." Before Elena could protest, the floor beneath her feet vanished. She fell. Not through air but through memory. She landed in her childhood home. The peeling wallpaper. The broken heater. Her mother crying at the kitchen table with unpaid bills spread like accusations. Elena's chest tightened. "This isn't real," she whispered. But it felt real. Her younger self appeared, thin, frightened, clutching a backpack with torn straps. The sound of yelling echoed from another room. "You'll never be anything," a voice snarled. "Just like your father." Elena dropped to her knees. The trial fed on fear. On shame. On wounds that never healed. She felt eyes on her, vampire eyes, watching her unravel. "Stand," a voice commanded. She looked up. Lucien stood there. Not as a king. As a man. "This trial lies," he said quietly. "It shows you what hurts, not what's true." Elena's hands shook. "I can't stop it." "You don't have to," Lucien replied. "Just don't kneel to it." The scene shifted. Now she was older, working late shifts, being shouted at, blamed, ignored. Customers sneered. Managers threatened. Life crushed her again and again. "Why do you keep standing?" the trial whispered. "Why don't you break?" Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Because," she said hoarsely, "if I break, there's nothing left." The illusion shattered. Elena collapsed onto the stone floor of the council chamber, gasping. Silence. The elders stared at her, shaken. She resisted, one murmured. "No human has ever." "She didn't fight it with strength," another said slowly. "She endured it." Lucien knelt beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder. "It's over." Elena looked up at him, eyes red but fierce. "Am I allowed to stay?" Lucien's gaze softened. "Yes." The council dismissed her. But danger did not. That night, Elena wandered into the estate gardens, needing air after surviving the trial. Moonlight bathed the roses in silver. She didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. The same vampire woman from dinner stepped out of the shadows. "You embarrassed us," she hissed. "A human should know her place." Elena backed away. The vampire lunged. Lucien appeared instantly, slamming the woman into a stone pillar with a sound that cracked marble. "Touch her again," Lucien said coldly, "and I will forget every law holding me back." The vampire fled. Elena stared at Lucien, trembling. "You didn't have to." "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." For the first time, his control fractured. Not into rage but fear. "I brought you into danger," he admitted. "And I won't lose you because of my choices." Elena stepped closer. "You didn't force me," she said. "You gave me a chance." Lucien's eyes darkened, not with hunger, but something deeper. "I have watched empires fall," he said. "And yet you, an ordinary girl, stood against ancient magic and didn't beg. She reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. Their fingers brushed. The world seemed to hold its breath. But above them, the blood moon burned brighter. And far from the gardens, Prince Adrian watched from a balcony, smiling. Because Elena's trial had only confirmed one thing. She wasn't weak. She was dangerous. The Nocturne estate did not celebrate the morning after Elena survived the trial. They watched her. Elena felt it the moment she stepped into the corridor outside her chamber. The whispers were no longer curious. They were calculating. Eyes followed her from behind columns and half-closed doors, glowing faintly in the dim light. Servants bowed lower than before, not out of respect but fear. She had crossed a line no human was meant to cross. Lucien walked beside her, silent and alert. His presence pushed the tension back, like a wall against a rising tide, but even he could not erase it completely. "They're afraid of you," Elena murmured. Lucien's jaw tightened. They should be afraid of what they might become. They entered the eastern gallery, where ancient portraits lined the walls, kings and queens frozen in oil and shadow. Elena studied the faces. None of the queens looked kind. None looked human. "I don't belong in this world," she said quietly. Lucien stopped walking. "You endured something that broke vampires older than nations," he replied. "That alone means you belong anywhere you choose to stand." Before she could answer, a bell tolled through the estate. "What? Twice? 3 times. Council summons." Lucien's expression darkened. "They're moving faster than I expected." The council chamber felt colder than before. The crimson runes glowed brighter, pulsing like veins beneath stone. Every elder was present. Prince Adrian leaned against the wall, relaxed, almost bored. Elena stood alone in the center. Lucien took his place beside her, deliberately close but not touching, a signal. She was not abandoned. "We convene under emergency authority," the eldest counselor announced. "The presence of a human within the royal sphere has destabilized the hierarchy." Elena swallowed but did not bow. "She has proven resilience," another elder admitted reluctantly. "But resilience is not allegiance." Adrian pushed off the wall. "Then let us bind her." The word echoed. Elena's stomach dropped. "A binding?" Lucien snapped. "You mean enslavement." "Tradition," Adrian corrected smoothly. "A symbolic oath. She kneels, swears loyalty and remains under royal command." Elena's heart pounded. She looked at Lucien. His fists were clenched. "If she refuses," an elder added, "she must be removed from the estate immediately." Removed. Exiled into forests filled with creatures far worse than vampires. Lucien spoke through clenched teeth. "You're asking me to sacrifice her freedom." "We're asking you to prove you're still king," Adrian replied. Silence fell. Elena stepped forward. Lucien turned sharply. "Don't." "I won't kneel," Elena said, her voice shaking but clear. "But I'll swear loyalty as a guest until the wedding ends. After that, I leave." Gasps rippled through the chamber. A human negotiating with immortals. The elders whispered among themselves. Finally the eldest nodded. "Very well. The binding ceremony will occur tonight. Limited. Conditional." Lucien stared at Elena like she had just walked into fire for him. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly as they left. She met his gaze. "I already did when I stayed." That night, the courtyard transformed into something ancient and terrible. Blue fire burned in iron braziers. Sigils carved into the ground glowed faintly, humming with restrained power. Vampires gathered in ceremonial silence, hunger sharpened by anticipation. Elena stood at the center, dressed in pale fabric that made her look painfully human among shadows. Lucien stood opposite her, his expression unreadable. "If anything feels wrong," he said softly, "you say the word. I will stop this." Elena nodded. The ritual began. Ancient words filled the air, heavy and vibrating. The sigils pulsed. Elena felt pressure wrap around her chest. Not pain but weight. Expectation. Then a scream shattered the night. One of the elders collapsed, veins blackening instantly. Vampires surged forward in chaos. Poison. Betrayal. "It's the human." Hands grabbed Elena. She cried out. "No." Lucien roared, power exploding outward, cracking stone. Adrian stepped forward, raising his hands. "Brother, control yourself. If you interfere, you confirm her guilt." Lucien froze. Elena looked at him, eyes wide, heart breaking. "Lucien," she screamed as guards dragged her away. He didn't move. The crown held him still. They threw Elena into a stone cell beneath the estate, the door slamming shut with finality. The damp walls smelled of old blood and regret. She slid down, hugging her knees, tears falling silently. Hours passed. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Lucien stood there, his face stripped of all pretense. "I had to let them think I chose the crown," he said hoarsely. "If I had moved, you'd be dead." Elena looked up at him, shattered. "You still let them take me." "I know," he whispered. "And I will spend eternity undoing it." He knelt before her, eyes burning, not with hunger but fury and fear. "I know who poisoned the elder," he said. "Adrian. My brother is staging a coup." Elena's tears stopped. "Then we fight," she said quietly. Lucien stared at her, this fragile, unbreakable human. "Yes," he said. "Together." Above them, the blood moon burned at its brightest. And the vampire kingdom stood on the edge of civil war. The dungeon beneath the Nocturne estate was older than the kingdom itself. Elena felt it in the way the air pressed against her skin, thick with ancient sorrow, soaked in memories of screams that had never fully faded. The stone walls were etched with claw marks from creatures long dead, and the iron door hummed faintly with magic meant to weaken anything human. She sat on the cold floor, back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. For the first time since arriving at the estate, she allowed herself to feel it. The betrayal. The fear. The unbearable ache in her chest that came from trusting someone powerful enough to destroy her. Lucien's face replayed in her mind, the way he had frozen, the way he hadn't followed when they dragged her away. She understood why, but understanding didn't stop the pain. "I was stupid," she whispered to the darkness. "I forgot my place." The shadows shifted. Someone else was there. A woman stepped into the dim torchlight, her presence heavy and unfamiliar. She wore no jewelry, no royal colors, only a simple black gown. Her eyes were dark, ancient, and strangely gentle. "You survived the veil," the woman said softly. "And the council." Elena stiffened. "If you're here to threaten me, get in line." The woman smiled faintly. "I'm here to warn you." She sat across from Elena, folding her hands calmly. "My name is Seraphine. I was queen once." Elena's breath caught. "Once?" "I was erased," Seraphine replied. "Because I was human." The words hit Elena like a blade. "They allowed you to become queen?" she asked. "For a time," Seraphine said. "Until they realized what I was." Elena's heart pounded. "What were you?" Seraphine leaned closer, lowering her voice. "A catalyst." Above ground, Lucien stood alone in the war chamber, staring at a map stained with centuries of blood. The room trembled faintly as raised voices echoed from nearby halls. The council was fracturing. Adrian moved openly now, rallying traditionalists, whispering that Lucien had gone weak, that his mercy endangered vampire supremacy. Lucien felt the strain like iron bands tightening around his chest. But worse than the politics was the silence. Elena hadn't screamed. She hadn't begged. That terrified him more than rebellion. "She hasn't broken," Seraphine continued. "They sense it. That's why they fear you." Elena shook her head. "I'm nobody." Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "That's what they told me too." She traced a symbol into the dust with her finger, an ancient sigil Elena had never seen, yet somehow recognized. The air hummed. "There is a prophecy," Seraphine said. "Buried. Forbidden. It speaks of a human heart that does not bow to blood." Elena's breath came shallow. "What does it say?" "That a human woman would walk into vampire royalty uninvited," Seraphine said quietly. "That she would endure their magic, survive their cruelty, and awaken something they buried long ago." Elena laughed weakly. "That's ridiculous." Seraphine smiled sadly. "That's what they said about me, until I calmed a war by refusing to kill." Lucien stormed into Adrian's private wing, fury barely contained. Guards stepped aside, not out of loyalty but fear. Adrian stood at the window, watching the blood moon descend. "You poisoned the elder," Lucien said flatly. Adrian didn't turn. He was already dying. "You framed Elena." Adrian finally faced him, eyes blazing. "She is the problem, brother. She makes them hesitate. She makes you hesitate." Lucien's voice dropped to a growl. "Touch her again and I will burn this kingdom down." Adrian smiled. "Then you confirm the prophecy." Lucien froze. "What prophecy?" he demanded. Adrian's smile widened. "Ah, so they never told you." Back in the dungeon, Elena's head spun as Seraphine continued. "The prophecy says the human woman will become the king's greatest weakness," Seraphine said. "And his greatest strength." Elena felt something shift inside her, like a locked door cracking open. They tried to erase the prophecy, Seraphine went on. They killed everyone who carried its memory. Everyone except me. Why are you telling me this? Elena whispered. Because they're about to execute you, Seraphine replied calmly. Publicly. At the wedding. Elena's blood ran cold. And because, Seraphine added, the prophecy ends with a choice. Lucien's fist slammed into the council table as Adrian revealed the truth. She will force a reckoning, Adrian said. Humans and vampires standing equal? The old order cannot survive that. Lucien's voice trembled, not with fear but rage. You're afraid she'll change us? Yes, Adrian snapped. Because change weakens empires. Lucien turned away, breath heavy. He had ruled through control, restraint, sacrifice. But Elena. She had ruled nothing. And yet she had changed everything. In the dungeon, guards arrived. Seraphine stood, her expression resigned. It's time. Elena rose on shaking legs. If this ends with my death. It won't, Seraphine interrupted. Not if the king remembers who he is. The doors opened. Elena was led back into the light, into a kingdom teetering on collapse. She walked through the corridors with her head high, even as vampires whispered, even as hatred burned in their eyes. Lucien felt her presence before he saw her. When she entered the great hall, shackled but unbowed, something inside him broke completely. Not his control. His obedience. He stepped forward. Unchain her, Lucien commanded. Gasps erupted. Adrian shouted, You'll start a war. Lucien's eyes locked onto Elena's. Then let it burn, he said. The blood moon dimmed. The prophecy had begun to fulfill itself. The great hall fell into a silence so deep it felt unnatural. Chains clattered to the marble floor. Elena stood free. Lucien's command still echoed in the vaulted ceiling, vibrating through stone older than memory. Vampires stared in disbelief, some in fury, others in something far more dangerous, uncertainty. Adrian stepped forward, his voice sharp as glass. You cannot undo centuries of law with a single command. Lucien did not look away from Elena. I am not undoing it, he said calmly. I am ending it. The blood moon outside dimmed further, its crimson glow paling as if the sky itself were holding its breath. Elena's hands trembled, not from fear but from the weight of what he had just done. One word from him had shattered the balance of an empire. One choice had exposed every fracture hiding beneath tradition. Lucien, she whispered. If you do this, there's no return. He finally turned to her, his expression bare. No king, no monster, no legend. Just a man who had ruled too long by denying his own heart. I return the night I let them take you, he said softly. This is me correcting that mistake. A roar erupted from the council benches. Treason. He has fallen. The human has enslaved him. Adrian raised his hand, power crackling through the air. You see, he shouted to the nobles. She stands at the center of our collapse. Elena stepped forward before Lucien could move. Every eye locked onto her. I never asked for this, she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her chest. I never asked for his crown. I never asked for your fear. She looked around the hall, at the monsters, the rulers, the immortals who had lived by blood and dominance for centuries. But I will not die to protect your cruelty. The room trembled. Not from magic. From recognition. Some of them remembered Seraphine. Some remembered the wars that ended not by victory but by mercy. Old memories stirred, dangerous ones. Adrian snarled. Kill her. The first vampire lunged. He never reached her. Lucien moved faster than sight, his power exploding outward like a broken dam. Stone cracked. Columns shattered. The vampire hit the far wall and did not rise. Lucien stood between Elena and the hall, eyes blazing silver. Anyone who crosses this line, he said, his voice echoing with ancient authority, answers to me. That was when the guards split. Half moved toward Adrian. Half moved toward Lucien. The kingdom broke in two. Chaos erupted. Steel rang against stone. Magic tore through the air. Vampires clashed, brother against brother, oath against bloodline. The wedding hall became a battlefield, banners burning as centuries of suppression ignited at once. Lucien fought like a storm unleashed, but even he could not be everywhere. A blade flashed toward Elena. She did not scream. She caught it. The metal burned her palm, but she held it, eyes locked with her attacker. I am not your enemy, she said. The vampire hesitated. That hesitation saved her life. Lucien finished the fight with a single brutal strike. You should have run. Adrian laughed from the dais, blood streaking his face. You should have killed her when you had the chance. Lucien advanced slowly. You poisoned the council. You framed an innocent woman. You tried to turn me into your weapon. Adrian spread his arms. I tried to save us. No, Elena said, stepping beside Lucien despite the danger. You tried to preserve your power. Adrian's eyes flicked to her, cold and calculating. You think they'll follow you? A human? They will turn on you the moment he falls. Elena met his gaze. Then let them. Adrian lunged for Lucien. The fight between brothers was violent and personal, magic and fists, memory and rage colliding. The hall shook with every blow. Adrian fought with desperation. Lucien fought with finality. At last Adrian fell to his knees. Lucien stood over him, breath heavy, claws bared. End it, Adrian spat. Prove them right. Lucien raised his hand. And stopped. Elena touched his arm. No, she said quietly. The hall watched. Mercy, Elena continued, is not weakness. It's accountability. Lucien looked at her, really looked at her, and something ancient shifted. He turned back to Adrian. You are stripped of title, Lucien declared. Exiled beyond the Black Reach. Return and you die. Adrian laughed bitterly as guards dragged him away. You've already lost, he said. They'll never accept her. Lucien faced the hall. Then they will accept change. Silence followed. Then one vampire knelt. Then another. Not all but enough. Enough to begin. Later, as dawn crept over the horizon for the first time in centuries, Elena stood on the balcony overlooking a kingdom forever altered. Lucien joined her. It won't be easy, he said. They will resist. They will test you. She smiled faintly. I don't want their obedience. What do you want? She looked out at the city, at humans and vampires waking under the same sky. Balance, she said. Truth. And a future where no one has to kneel to survive. Lucien took her hand, not as king to subject, but as equal to equal. You will not be queen, he said quietly. She glanced at him, surprised. No, he continued. You will be something far rarer. She waited. The woman who changed a kingdom without ever wearing a crown. The sun rose. And for the first time the vampire world did not burn.